Hello, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and today I'm sharing a project that I made using the Simon Says stamp Elizabeth background stamp, which is a really super cool stamp, but I wanted to turn it into a snowflake. So I had a few little challenges, but I think it turned out pretty well in the end. So to start off with, I have a piece of white cardstock cut at 5 inches by 5 inches. And then I'm deciding how I want this stamp to overlay the white. I knew I wanted it to be off the sides to a certain extent. So I'm using my Misty because this is a really, really, really detailed stamp. So I wanted to make sure that I could stamp it multiple times with my Versamark ink to make sure that I would get good coverage with my embossing powder and get every little bit of this stamp stamped correctly. I can't tell you how detailed it is. It's incredibly detailed. And even though the image on the back there has like a border around the edge, when you stamp it, it actually goes all the way out to the edges of the physical edges of that stamp. So it's bigger than what it shows on the back of it. So I stamped it twice, and I have to press down pretty hard, and you need to make sure that you really get the outer edges, like those petals with the little points on them. I had to press those down pretty hard to make sure that they got a really good impression, but it worked. And so now I am coating this with Beautiful embossing powder, which is from Wow, and it's a really, really pretty, gorgeous sea, sort of blue-green. It's a very soft kind of oceany color. It's one of my favorite colors ever, so I just love it. And I thought I wanted to do a snowflake wintry card, but I didn't want to be just, silver or light blue. I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I picked this sort of greeny blue color. And then to add a little bit of extra shimmer to my big snowflake, I decided to pull out my Tombow watercolors, the Starry Colors Watercolor Palette, and fill in a few areas here and there with some of this iridescent-y watercolor. Now, if you have this palette and you've used it, you know it shows up really, really well on dark color. And then on light colors, it's much more subtle. And so that was why I purposely used it on this white background, because I knew it would be a pretty subtle tint of color that I'd be adding. So the first shade I used was light gold into the insides of those petals. And now I'm using blue gold to just go around the outer edges of those inner petals, and then that little circle right in the center. And blue gold is probably the darkest color that I use. I only used 4 of the colors in the palette. I didn't want to go too dark and too gold. And now I'm using champagne gold for the outer triangular portions of those inner petals. And the cool thing about this is that with embossing, the embossing resists the watercolor, so it really just fills in the section areas between where it isn't embossed, and there's a lot of those in the stamp. Oh, and now I'm using white gold, just so you know. But be careful that you don't let anything dry on top of the embossing powder, because if you let it sit on top of there where you can't see the embossing anymore, it will cover it and like obscure it. So you'll have to take like a Q-tip or something and get it off, and it's kind of a pain, let me tell you. So I used a little more champagne gold on those paisleys, and then now I'm using light gold on those very outer edges of those outer petals. And then I take my blue gold and go just over the centers of these tiny little flowers that are right around the inside. And for those, I did have to go back in and like dab off the middles. Otherwise, it would have dried and just covered it. Now, I liked how this looked, but I didn't think it looked very wintry yet. So I thought I needed a few extra snowflakes. So I have this set from Stampenda. It's called Build a Snowman, and it has 5 really cool little snowflakes in it, and they seem to coordinate really well with this Elizabeth background stamp. They're very delicate. They have like lots of dots and little details, so I thought they kind of coordinated well with this bigger stamp as a snowflake idea. So I stamped all 5 of the snowflakes from that set onto this piece using Lawn Fawn mermaid ink, and that mermaid ink coordinates almost exactly with that Beautiful embossing powder. So yay, Now for my greeting, I'm using Elizabeth Craft Designs Holiday Clear Stamps, and I'm stamping Warm Winter Wishes and embossing it in silver embossing powder. I wanted to, obviously make this a winter card, and so that seemed like an appropriate greeting. And a little bit of silver seemed like a good idea with my snowflake theme. So now you can see I have got the card base and the mat ready to go. And I've also added a bunch of sequins and some gold seed beads around on the card. So I'm going to adhere all those down with Ranger Multimedia Matte and these fabulous fine point tweezers from Elizabeth Craft Designs that I absolutely love. Anyway, you may have heard me talk about them in other videos. These sequins are really cool. They are also from Simon Says Stamp. It's the Moonshine assortment, and it's just a whole bunch of different sizes, everything from like the big one that's in the middle of that big stamp to these tiny ones, and they're all like clear or iridescent or silver, and they're just beautiful. And then I added some tiny seed beads in gold here and there from my stash just to kind of pull in a little bit of gold and finish it off. Now you can see I added some foam tape to the back of my greeting. My greeting I had die cut out with the Elizabeth Craft Designs dotted scallop squares just to give it that little sort of frilly edge to go with my stamps. And now I'm just going to adhere the entire panel down. I've already adhered the silver piece onto that white cardstock base here. I did trim it down a little bit from that previous segment. The white card base is 5.5 by 5.5, and the silver I wound up cutting down to 5 3/16 inches by 5 3/16 inches, just to give the panel with the snowflakes a tiny edge. And so there is the completed project, and I really liked it. I thought it turned out pretty well. It's kind of an unusual color palette for a snowflakey winter card, but I liked it, and I thought that the starry colors kind of gives it a fun gold iridescence that's a little bit different for a winter card as well. So hopefully I've given you a little inspiration on ways you can use those really cool big background stamps from Simon Says Stamp in maybe a different way than normal. So thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it. As always, there is a link to the supply list below in the video description and on my blog. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, hey, it's time you subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at blacksheep303. Thanks so much and have a great day.